Hello to myself and everybody else. This is video 11. So far today, I'll get in that in a second, but so far today, I'm just going to just kind of take a look at Gamemaker and just really just walk through what certain things do and like the layout and everything. So if in the future, for some reason, if I need to just go back and look at this, or if someone stumbles across this and they want to give Gamemaker a try, they can just see this and at least get an idea of how this works, so they won't go in completely blind and everything. So go ahead and just start looking at like the layout and everything. So far, this is how Gamemaker looks. The layout I have now, I change it a bit because normally the assets are on the right side of the screen, and usually the room editor will open up on the left side of the screen. But currently I just kind of moved things around because this layout right here was how Gamemaker 1 was before they eventually changed to 2, and then they changed to this one. So with that, I just prefer the old layout because I got used to it. One thing, if you're getting started with Gamemaker and everything and stuff too, and you just want to get used to it, one thing you probably should do first is go into File, Preferences, General Settings, and make sure that the maximum frame rate of Gamemaker Editor is set to 60. Because I remember back in the day, the default was 30 FPS, and you had to manually bump it up to 60 in the settings. If you didn't know that, all your games would be 30 FPS. I think currently now it does default to 60, so that's just something they did as a change of life thing, but I would still recommend just to check to make sure that it's still set to 60. Plus, you can just go around and like play with different settings and everything like that too, just to make sure some stuff. The other thing I would recommend, and this is something you would probably learn after you mess around with it for a while, the feather settings. I'd highly recommend going into this and messing around with it, especially the message sensitivity, or not sensitivity, but basically the freaking messages and all that. Mess with this because it will warn you and put red lines under certain things when you're programming that will make you think, oh, I have an error, something's wrong, the game won't work right, when in reality it's just like a suggestion of being like, oh, you should probably, have a system of naming your variables, or you should change how this is spaced or something like that. It would just have like an error line there. Your game will work fine, but it'll look like you have a whole bunch of errors, which will mess you up. So I recommend going through and just, change some of the settings. Because like for this one, I have like GM like 1017. Just have that set to ignore, and like 1024 built-in variables. So like just a lot of like things like that I just set to ignore, because some of them are like really annoying warnings. Where like how I set my variables, it's like I'll just name it something where it's like I'll name it jump because this controls the jump. And Gamemaker, when they added the feather feature, that warning would just pop up and it would just be like, oh, this variable is wrong, you should name it something else because the naming convention isn't good, which would just freak me out because it made me think, oh, all my variables are wrong or something, and it's like, no, it's just a suggestion. So like I said, I recommend going through. I just scroll through it, so if anybody just wanted to like run through that, or specifically for me, if I wanted to like go back in the future and reset all this, if I make another game, have to reset it, I can use this as a way to just like see what my settings and stuff were and all that. But anytime you do anything, hit apply to apply it, then hit OK to accept everything. But getting down to the main thing with Gamemaker, so far the asset browser, like this whole thing here, is where your entire thing will take place. Like everything you do will take place here. making your sprites, which are your images for, you know, everything, your fonts, scripts, paths, sounds, objects, which are the things you'll put code in, put in the room, and the rooms, which are the levels themselves. All that stuff will just be over here, so it's really important to just, you know, mess around with that. So far, there's also a search bar, which helps if you're like me, you have like a ton of objects or sprites or anything. Because like looking at this, I have like a bunch of folders filled with a bunch of objects and everything. So if I'm looking for something specific, if you don't have like a good organizing system, you can just type in the search and just try to find it. And next, we look at the sprites. So far, the sprites are where you're going to put all of your objects for various like objects, like your health, or you know, like I got like one for like a milk sprite, something like that. Everything for this, you'll just like, if you want to make a sprite, you'll just like right click, go to create, and then just find whatever you're looking for here to make. The thing is with the folders and everything here too, you don't necessarily have to follow like what it says. You don't have to be like, oh, all sounds must go in sounds or it won't work. Like, you don't have to do that. If you want, you can like right click outside of it and just create your own group, which will just make a folder, and you can just like put your stuff in that if you want. This whole thing is basically just a matter of like organizing your stuff, but you can have it any way you want. But I would just recommend just keeping it like this and utilizing that to just help keep things organized. But with this and all that, I usually use the sprites, as you can see, for like backgrounds, bosses, like enemies, stuff for parallax, and just a bunch of other objects too, like instruction objects. I even make my thumbnails and stuff in here as well for this. Like, I would just look at this one. Like for this, I just open it up and just do what I need. Do this one because I had to resize the other one. Just go in here, and this is what like it will look like when you make a sprite. Basically, the FPS is just if you have an animation for it, which every frame you have will be displayed here. You can just hit play, and it'll go through all of those. How quick it is based on this is default to 30 FPS, but you can change that to whatever you want, just depending on if you want the sprite to be really quick or slow. Here you also control like the size of the sprite by just clicking here, and you can change the size of the canvas. For like here, you can just rescale the sprite. Over here, you can resize the canvas. If you resize the canvas, the sprite will basically stay where it is, but the canvas will get bigger. You scale the image, it will change the size of the image and usually the canvas as well. But you can maintain the aspect ratio so it won't like stretch the object out and things like that and mess it up. And you can also control your collision mask, where it's basically the hitbox of the object, where you will go into mode and type. Automatic means it automatically puts a hitbox over the entire image, like any place you've drawn on, it's a hitbox. You can change that to full image, which is usually kind of similar to automatic, but in manual, where you can like drag the corners around and just select what specifically you want to be a hitbox. But it'll only be as one thing. You can't make like multiple, as far as I know of. Set that back. And then the type, you can have rectangle, where the hitbox will be a rectangle with rotation, so you can just rotate it where it is. Ellipse and diamond, like all of these are just very specific for like how the hitbox will look. Usually a lot of the time I'll use precise slow or precise per frame, because precise slow, basically the first frame of your object, it will set the hitbox to that, and then it'll basically make the hitbox big enough so every frame it's covering it in that area. Precise per frame means every frame the hitbox will change to just fit exactly that sprite. So you can make the hitbox very precise, so if anything touches that object, it will be dependent on frame. So far, there's probably a better way for me to show it, but Again, I have to go to like another object for that, so I probably could just show that real quick. Let's go to generic characters and just go here. Yeah, for the collision and everything. Like I use rectangle and stuff for this, so it just fits this and manual, so I set it so every frame is just still set to that. If I set it to precise, then it would just exactly be the character object, so then the next frame it would still be this, but it would move to match it. I kind of want to mess around with it too much because I'm like this far into it and I want to just like do something, change everything. But basically that's just how the layout of this looks. Then you actually go into it, edit the image. It will open up a new tab here, and from there, yeah, it just took a second. And from there, you can just have your whole canvas and just draw whatever you need. You have your different brush sizes. You can also up here change the size of your brush. These other layers appear as well, like image, where you can just like flip, mirror the image. Basically anything you rotate it does it to the whole canvas, but if you want to do it to something you selected specifically, you would use like the selection tools, like these three over here. You also go to view, toggle how that affects the effects, blur, grayscale. Things over here to zoom in and out. You have you have your different brushes, which you can also just use the select tool, select something, hit Control Z, and also like become a brush up here where you can just like click and move and just add more stuff. The colors, you can select colors up here, or you can manually click and change it around here as well by just clicking and dragging. Same thing with this side, it's just like left click and right click. You also alternate which is which, so pretty good for like swapping colors on the fly. Plus here it saves whatever the last color you used was, so you can help like with your palette and everything. And then layers, use this to make multiple layers so you don't have to worry about like doing everything on one canvas. So if you need to change it, you really don't have to worry about that, because this can help save time in the long run, just multiple layers like Photoshop and everything. And use this to add the layer, create folders for it, or you can just delete the layer. Also, if you want to change the name of it, you have to like double click on it, type it in, hit enter, and there you go. As well as you can also change the opacity of the layer to make things see-through or completely solid. So just another thing for that. Or you can also like make it visible or invisible, just depending on what you want. Then basically when you also like play your sprite as well too, from here, add frames, keep drawing stuff, hit play. And this right here allows you to like see other layers. So if you need to like move something a little bit, you can see where it previously was located in the frame before and after it, just depending on what you need. So I'll just go ahead and close these, and we just do everything. But yeah, so that's the whole thing with the sprites here. Just a matter of messing around with it and just seeing what you can. So far, a lot of things on here I don't really use yet because I'm not 100% new to Gamemaker. I've used it for a while, but there's still like a lot of things I haven't fully looked into yet, because I'm still just kind of working with basic stuff like sprites, objects, and rooms, the main things for that. Notes, I started making those, just like messing around with stuff. Sounds, I usually use for music. And usually paths, I've been using those for like certain bosses and scripts, and fonts I use for like cutscenes and the text for the screen. Like the fonts, you can just like set here, just name it whatever you want, and just, you know, select whatever kind of font you want and use that for other things like cutscenes, text, whatever you want for that. The scripts, just right click, say create script, and yeah, so far I'm clicking on these two, and sometimes if you double click on it, if you double click on the word, it will do this where it's highlighted in the selectors there. you can like change the name of it if you want. Normally, if you want to actually open up, you're supposed to double click the image. Sometimes it's finicky a little bit, but just basically double click on it. Just make sure you don't accidentally be hitting keys and change your name. But yeah, here's things for the scripts and all that too. Just open that up and do what you need to do and everything like that. So far with scripts, I need to work on that way more, but because a lot of these I got from other places, so I need to like experiment, work with these way more. But just put your scripts here and everything, and then you can just use them as functions and other stuff later. Your paths, I have a lot of these. Basically for your paths, you just, for this, you basically make the path object. So you right click, make the path, and then what you want to do is, I'm going to like skip down real quick, is go to the room that you're looking for. And so far for this, let me just open up one that already has a path. Something like this, where you see this red line here, this is a path. So this is where, like, first, let me just, since I have to jump down, this is a room in which this is where you're going to be putting all your objects you've made and programmed into here to make the physical level itself. You'll be using these layers to put your objects in, so objects can be above or behind something. Just may matter that, as well as you'll be using this for your code, the name of these layers, to be able to make objects. So if you use something like create instance layer, which is a function to make an object somewhere, you will be having to use the name of the layer and stuff here in double quotes to basically select whatever layer. And you have to make sure it's specific, because it's very letter and capitalized sensitive. If it's not exactly the way it is in the room, it will cause an error. So the best way to do it is make sure you name the layers something simple so you can remember. Or if you don't feel like typing it because something long, you can right click the layer, hit rename, then just right click again, hit copy, click another layer to unselect it, and you have the name copied. So you can just do that as well if you want. Something I do a lot. But back to the paths. So far, to add a path to the room, you would click right here, create a path, which I have 2 of them. You would do this. You would click here to select the path that you made over here. You'll find it somewhere in here, select it, and then once you select it, you can manually just click in the room the points where you want the path to be. That's just an easy way to do it. Another way you could do it as well, if you wanted to, is to go in here and manually type in the coordinates for it as well. But that can take a long time, and if you don't know exactly where you want it, then you have to like mess around and trial and error it a lot. So it's better just to do it that other way. So far, the sounds, which I use for my music and sound effects, just same thing, just right click, select create sound, and then this pops up. So far with this, you would click these 3 dots right here to open up your file and everything, and just try to find wherever you have your music or sound effects located. So that's what you normally do for that. If you have them in music or on a flash drive or something, you just navigate to there, select it, and it will just open it up here. This controls the volume of it. This is how long the sound effect or song or whatever is. So when you hit play, it will do this. As I said before, this is I'm still kind of tired because I've recorded like 3 of these videos like really late, so kind of forgetting if I said something. This right here is the volume, so you can just move up or down, and that affects how loud it is, not just here, but also in game as well. So recommend just like trying to adjust your music outside of it, and then just have it here so it's default to 1. As well as the settings here for attributes. I usually leave these the default. Like most of these I just leave the default. The only thing I do is just the audio groups. I just create those and just use that to like sort the music, because usually the audio groups you make can be useful for like settings. So if you make like a sound bar, you can just set it to affect like a specific group, and if the slider is affected, or however you have your volume affected is, you can just make sure your music's like lower, louder, whatever you need to for that. To make an audio group, I have to like see where it is because it's been like a while. For a second, let's see. Yeah, right here. Go to tools and then audio groups, and you'll use that to create an audio group. I want to click on that now because once you kind of start it, it kind of just keeps, it'll kind of be like, okay, you made one by default. So kind of just remember where it is, just tools and then audio groups. And then finally, the main place to be working at the entire time is the objects, where I just made like a bunch of folders, and I usually put the characters and stuff here. So far for here is where, say, you make the objects, so you name it whatever you want. Normally I recommend for an object naming it obj underscore and then whatever you want to name it. It usually helps so you can identify as an object or a sprite or something. For objects, obj underscore. For sprites, spr underscore. For sounds, you can put snd underscore. And for rooms, you can put like rm underscore. But most of the time, I just like put the name of the room because like I can usually tell the difference for mine. But if you're working with somebody else, it's just good to have a good organized way to do it. So far here, you can select whatever sprite you want the object to be. You would just navigate to it. So like it will default to the sprite file, or will find any sprite object. And from here, you can just find whatever you need, or you can just type in the search specifically for what you want. Or you can set it to none, so there's no sprite. Usually it's default to that. Or you can create a new sprite, just whatever you want for that. The collision mask, same as sprites, basically like the hitbox for it is this sprite, or you can set it to be the hitbox is something else. Usually this I never mess with like at all, but the main things I usually mess with is like visual, where it makes it so the object will be visible in the room or invisible. If you do this, you can put the object in the room, you can still see it like in the room editor. But once you go to the actual room and start the game, it will just be invisible. You won't be able to see it. Which is different from setting like a layer to just invisible, because you do that, you won't be able to see in the room editor or in the room. Persistent, this usually means if an object exists, it will basically exist in every room you go to. So it just will always be there. So if you go like to another room or something like that too in the game, that object will still be there in the exact same position in the new room. Again, a thing that's pretty useful if you have like global variables or something like that, useful for that. Solid usually means an object doesn't move, and sometimes it stops a character they touch it. Use physics, basically that connects to this, and I haven't worked with that yet, so I can't really go too much into detail for that too much. Something though I would recommend as well if you want more information on something is, one, Gamemaker has a huge community and forum that you can ask for help and talk to people and just see if you can get any help there, so I recommend that. As well as a lot of people make videos on YouTube for like certain things you're looking for, so that's also a really good thing to do. There's like multiple ways to find things you need and help and stuff to get and all that, so I'd highly recommend that as well. Or you can go over here to help, open manual, and when you do that, it will open the manual up online, and you can just do what you need to because the manual is updated a lot, so you can just find what you're looking for pretty easily using the search. I would open it here, but the computer I'm using can't really connect to internet right now, so just really recording this. But yeah, that's also a good thing to mention too. Gamemaker can work without internet. It's just good to every once in a while connect to internet and just check if there's updates. But beyond that, you can still work offline. So if the internet goes out or you're not connected, you don't have to worry about that, which is a good thing for that as well. But back to the objects. So far, events. This is where you're going to be putting, well, events for things you want the object to do. Like specifically, like here, well, first you will go to add event. And here, all the events will pop up. The create event, where the moment the game starts, like the first frame, it will immediately just do whatever in the create event. So this is a good place to set alarms, set variables, various things like that for this object. So I'll just skip around a bit because I ain't going to go through everything. Because like I said, some stuff you can just go through the manual or find good tutorials for. Just going through the stuff I mostly use a lot for this. The step event, like every frame of the game, whatever code's in there, it will run. Unless you have like an if or else statement of like, if certain condition applies, do this. Because if it applies, then it will check every frame. Is this true or is this false? So with the step event, really useful. Just be careful what you put in there. Because if you put create an object and just that's it, just create an object, it will just keep making that object every frame, and that can like crash your game if there's too many. So just make sure you put like conditions and be really careful with that. The alarm, with these, basically you would set like, you would set the alarm in a create event. I highly recommend that, not in a step event, because in a step event it will just keep resetting and never like actually activate. But basically an alarm, you would just put like alarm, whatever number and stuff you want for there, and then you would just like make it equal to a number. And one important thing too to mention is that in Gamemaker, 1 second in this would be 60. And again, you're probably like, oh yeah, 1 second is, you know, like 16, so like, or, well yeah, basically that. I'm tired a bit, so I'm just kind of like all over the place, but basically 60 equals 1 second. Because based on what I showed you before with going to file and preferences and changing it so it's 60 FPS, if it's 30 FPS, then 30 would equal 1 second. So that's just a thing to like keep track of and to take note of what the FPS is, because that decides, okay, how long is a second. Because you set it to 60, that means in 1 second, it starts like immediately counting down 60 frames till it hits 0. And then whatever is in that alarm, it will immediately do that code. So if you have like, you know, set alarm 0 to 60, and you have inside of alarm 0 create an object, it will create that object and then stop. If you want the alarm to like keep activating, you have to keep setting the alarm. So once the alarm activates and alarm 0, you have to put, okay, set alarm 0 again, and then it'll just start counting down over and over again. So you have to be careful with that and everything. Draw, a way to put like images on the screen, such as like text or like life bars, if you want to make one in that. The mouse, how you can set like actions for somebody does something with the mouse, like they click a button or press or hold a button down. Same thing with the keyboard. Big difference here, because with keyboard down, if somebody holds down a key, it will keep doing the action over and over again, compared to key press, where if they hold it, it will only do it once until they let go and push it again. And key up, it basically will do the action once they let go of the key. So very similar to that. A lot of times I set a lot of these controls in the step event, but you can still just manually do it here if you want. So another thing, gesture. With Gamemaker, you can also like set up games for mobile devices and other things. So you can set it so people do certain things like tap, flick, various things like that. Collision, next thing here. Basically, this right here is for if the object you currently have here touches whatever object you select in collision, then you can just set it so something will happen. So far as you saw, mine took a second to load and everything because I have a lot of objects. So it can take, like, the more objects you have, the longer it can take to load depending on your computer. kind of doing this on an older one right now, so we can take a second, but newer ones, it'll probably be way quicker. This is a way to just like set multiple other things. I'll try to be more specific. Basically, you can set it so if this object is outside of the room, you can make it do something. If it intersects the boundary, that means the edges of the room, it does something. If it collides with like one of the views you set, and you set the view in the room, which basically if you just select the room, which I'll go ahead and show that. If you select the room, it will default open over here, where you can set like the width and height of the physical room itself, which will be this gridded area. And down here is the viewpoints and camera, where by default it will be enabled, but you just click a viewport, make it visible, and then you can just set what you want it to be. So for the X and Y position, the width and height, and then the viewport properties and everything, which actually these are like two different things, because the camera properties, that's this white box and stuff here, where this is just how big the screen will look. Well, this is what the people will see when they start the game. So somebody starts the game, they'll be able to see within this white box here. With viewport properties, that makes it so it's how big the like the physical box is when the game starts. Like, it's kind of hard to explain stuff on that too, but the viewport properties, basically, if you don't have your game set to full screen passively, it will change the view of the box. Like with Gamemaker, this right here, the whole window, it will change the size of that. So usually, again, I want to leave it to default and just set the game to open up on full screen, which is something you can do again in File and Preferences. You just have to find it. And then object following, basically it sets the camera to follow an object, and you set it so if you're this close to the like size of it or top or bottom, it will move along with you, or you can set it so it's just completely stationary. Same thing with the horizontal and vertical speed of just like how fast it is, or if it moves on its own. But just things like mess around with and everything like that too. Just a good thing, like just look into, mess around, just see what everything does. Yeah, so our game start and game end just makes so the first frame the game starts does something, first time the game, the last frame, like before the window closes, it does something. Same thing, room start, room end, animations, paths, user events, like just a lot of stuff you can do with this. And then the last thing would be asynchronous, which is what you would use for like API stuff and various other things. These I haven't really messed around with a ton, but I will basically mess around with these later. It's just a good thing, as I said again, to look at the manual and just like read up what a lot of things do, because it's really useful. Yeah, but that's everything on objects. Basically, once you make an object and you just program something into it, then you'll make it into a room, which I basically show those off. You just create the layers, you name whatever you want. So far, the differences between these are, this is a background controller where you make this, as I have here, you make multiple background objects, and you can just set these any way you want. Whereas like with this, the background, a bunch of stars. You can change whatever it is right here for this. Change the color, vertical and horizontal. Basically means I can have it just repeating in a horizontal or vertical pattern, which basically just means it copies the image, so it just fits the room vertically, horizontally, everything like that. The offset, I can move the image itself. The speed, I can make it look like it's scrolling on its own. So if I want, I can just set it up like, this right here, I can set the speed. Yeah, so far, sorry about that. So far, it stopped recording for a second. But for this right here, I can just like set the speed if I want everything, like the X, which will be the left and right. I set it to a positive number. It will start moving to the right. If I set it to a negative number, it'll move to the left. But I can just hit like that, hit enter, and then hit the play button here, which will show like what the room will look like when the game starts. And you see it just starts moving. And the reason why it moved off screen is because I don't have it like repeated. Because if you use the tile layer, it will repeat that and everything. So horizontal tile, it just repeats the image over and over again. So it looks like, you know, the background's moving. Same thing if I do vertical as well. I can make it do something like this. So I set it to 10, hit enter. And it looks like the ship is just like moving like crazier and all that. But it is like a good thing just to like mess around with and just, you know, see what you can do to make sure you hit enter and all that to everything. Then just hit that to stop it. But yeah, stuff for the background, just things to mess around with and see what you can do. Then right here is the instance create layer, in which this layer right here, you are mostly going to be using this with objects. So you make one of these layers, name it something, and then any object and stuff you made, you would then just like click, hold, and then just drag it into the room and place it. So that's how you just like get things in the room, specifically objects. And this also works with instance create layer, that function that allows you to make objects in code. You're going to basically take the layer name from this, because it is like letter and capital sensitive, and then copy that in the double quotes for where the layer would go. So this is important to make sure to keep track of your names and name them something that isn't like overly complicated, so you can always get it and be able to remember what it is. Or if you need to, you can just like right click it, rename, right click again, hit copy, click somewhere else to unselect it, and then you just go in there and paste it if you need like the exact thing for it. Beyond that, be the next thing of, oh yeah, also when you select like a layer like this will pop up. It will show you everything that's in that layer that's in the room. So this is a good way to like keep things organized. But okay, so in the scan lines layer, I have these objects. Pause layer, got nothing. Health object, I have these two. So just another thing to keep track of that. Here in the tile layer, that's the thing I really haven't used, but that's how you like make tiles, so you can have like easier backgrounds, floors, things like that. I will probably try to mess around with that later, but for now I don't really know a ton. The paths, I showed that earlier. For the assets, this layer will only work specifically with not objects but sprites, where you can do the same thing of click and drag a sprite in here and it will just like sit there, or well, specifically really it will just sit there and do its animation you have made for it, and that's really it. So that's just the thing, if you want to like have something in the background and things like that, just really good to mess around with that. The create new filter layer and everything, this is a newer thing, so like I said, just recommend looking in the instruction book, clicking help, open manual, and then just reading up on the different layers and stuff in the room, see what those do. Then you can also create a folder and delete a folder, help keep things more organized. And that's basically mostly everything I utilize in the room and all that. So with this, these are mostly all the things I use the most. Like there's still some things I don't, like shaders and extensions. Don't really mess with those yet and everything, but in the future probably. For now, just kind of keep it simple, just messing with like little things and everything like that. But I highly do recommend using help and open manual to just like learn more of the stuff here and everything. And yeah, that's really it. I really just wanted to make this video just to have a quick rundown of this, so just in case if I like leave and need to use it again, as well as if anyone is actually like working with this, like just get a quick rundown on how Gamemaker works and everything like that. So good thing for that. Plus it's another way for me to plus it was another way for me to just kind of like make some videos because I'm going to be studying for exams. So I just wanted to, have some videos made, because like this one and the other two before that, just made them out like one night just to practice a bit, plus to go and get some videos out there so I can make sure I just have some stuff made and ready, because I'll be studying for exams and be really busy, and I won't have to worry about like recording and editing. So just go ahead and make them, upload them, and there we go for that. So, but yeah, really, that's all. So to myself and everybody else, thanks for watching.